Chuck Schumer, Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat, number 3 in leadership in the Senate, came out against President Obama's deal with, or Iran nuclear deal. How big a deal is that?
Well, it was President Obama's plan to go into the recess, the congressional recess, with momentum. And he did that with Senator Kaine, Senator Nelson. A bunch of people announced their support for the plan. This interrupted that momentum. And I think the important, and angered the administration, and they responded pretty angrily, talking about his future in Democratic politics, which was pretty severe. The problem here is that Schumer did not just make a statement. He actually made an argument. He made a 1,500-word argument that when you compare that to the president's American University speech, it's pretty compelling. And that will now marinate the debate in Congress going into 4 weeks, where the American public opposes the deal in some of the polling by 2 to 1, where members are not going to hear reinforcement in their districts in many ways. So I think this opened up the debate again.
And I think a miscalculation on the part of the White House, it seems to me, because not a surprise Chuck Schumer is going to oppose this deal. It would have been a surprise if Chuck Schumer had come out and endorsed this deal.
Explain that for people who may not.
Because he is one of the biggest advocates for Israel that there is in the United States. Israel is very much opposed to this, says it reflects an existential threat to them. So it would have been amazing if Chuck Schumer had not come out against this deal. He came out against it, but he acknowledged you could be for the deal and still have a fair point of view, that there were arguments on both sides. And he's also not whipping this vote. He's not trying to get his colleagues, his Democratic colleagues, to go with him on this vote. That is a favor to the White House.
And that's a key point, because while these liberal groups are going to come out and say he isn't worthy of being the next Democratic leader in the Senate, the White House will raise concerns. If he sits on his hands, he's fine. Also remember, the only people that get the vote are Democratic senators themselves for their next leader. Right now, he's got them all in the bag. He'll be fine.
Yeah, the White House is overstating the possibility that Schumer's not going to be the next leader because of this. And frankly, the opponents of the deal are overstating Chuck Schumer's impact on the rest of the caucus. I think both sides are a little bit off here.
And he doesn't need their money. He's from New York.
The president's overreaching in his rhetoric on everyone, not just the Democrats in Congress, but essentially accusing Republicans of being for war, accusing Republicans of being in common, cause with the mullahs. That is a tremendous overreach in his rhetoric, and it's hard to explain. I mean, I think, will get the votes to sustain this deal, and he's had a hard time resisting a very divisive, polarizing language on this deal.
Imagine if during the Bush administration, President Bush had said those people who are against our actions, whether it be in Iraq or Afghanistan, are in common cause with the terrorists.
Some Democrats would suggest that's the kind of thing he did do back in the day. So, I mean, and a lot of people said this week he was taking a page from the George W. Bush playbook, whether you like it or not. And, Republicans, to some extent, justifiably stood up this week and said that's not the right answer. But, look, Bernie Sanders made the same argument. The only other alternative is potential war with Iran. If that's the argument they continue to make over the 6 weeks that Congress isn't in town, that argument might build favor.
But to Michael's point, the pointed language does not match where he is in the process. Like you would think, given that speech, that he was really back against the wall. It seems pretty likely that he's going to be able to find the votes to override or to block a veto.
We'll see. Susan, I want to pivot here as we move to the end. Hillary Clinton jumped on some remarks this week by Jeb Bush that Carly Fiorina mentioned. He was supposed to be talking about Planned Parenthood. He said he didn't think we needed to spend money on women's health issues. What was Hillary Clinton's? What was she up to there?
Well, this is catnip for Democrats and for Hillary Clinton, because the kind of offhand comment that Jeb Bush made feeds into the idea that Republicans do not, in fact, have Republican women's interests, do not have women's interests at heart. They can't be trusted to protect the interest of women. And since there's a greater chance that Jeb Bush is going to be the nominee than Donald Trump, I think it does. She's even more pleased to have Jeb Bush do this kind of misstep, which he then tried to backtrack on, than it is to have some of the outrageous comments that we've heard from Donald Trump.
And it's a good distraction, too. She has problems. I mean, she has an unfolding email scandal. It's hard to be transparent about something like this when you've got a server in your basement that you're not surrendering. I mean, that is a long-term problem for her. She is running a campaign that seems to be hemorrhaging money and losing support support. Democrats are looking at this. So I think she needs diversion here. And she does have some vulnerability on the populist left, which I think Bernie Sanders is showing. I don't think he can exploit it all the way, but I think he's showing that there's some room there on the left.
But bottom line, this is crass politics. You talk to Democrats privately, they are most petrified of the prospects of either a Jeb Bush or a Marco Rubio being their nominee, because they know that can eat into Hispanic support.
Florida.
The more they call it, and Florida, the more they call it out now, the more it'll be reminding voters that in a year, if they're the nominee, they had said all these things back in the day.
Ed O'Keefe, thanks so much. Thanks to all of you. I want to thank our panel. We'll be back in a moment with NAACP President Cornell William Brooks.